We need to up our game and shit. We need to do comedy butt naked, right?
Saying his goodbyes. He blew his eye socket off and his eyeball fell out.
White women keep kidnapping us. Y'all seen The Blind Side?
Aren't you glad we have that disclaimer at the beginning of the episode?
It's going to come in handy for this episode. This episode of the Voice Party Podcast is brought to you by Rich City Rides. Ride further, ride together. Get your ride on with Rich City Rides. What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Voice Party Podcast. It's me, JD, here. I got Phil, the ones and twos. What's up, Phil?
What's happening, honkies?
What's up? We got a very special guest today. I talked to this guy about a month ago.
Yeah.
And another fellow Richmond comic. Give it up for Dan Gonzo Machanik.
Machanik, that's right. Hey, how's everybody doing out there?
How you doing today?
YouTube land, Voice Party land.
Oh, man. It's always great to have someone on here that's a comic, and especially you've been doing it for a long time.
37 years.
Wow.
Yeah, and my dating profile says I'm 36, so a lot of people get confused. You know what I mean? It's like, you can do the math. You know, 37 years I've been doing it. I'm 58, and yeah, I'm 5'9", 210, so yeah.
So you started back in 1985, 80?
Somewhere in the late 80s.
Late 80s.
Yeah. Professionally in the late 80s.
Like, how was your first time on stage? Like, what got you to go perform stand-up?
Actually, my first time I was actually 3 years old, and I was over at the Fairfield Hotel, and I was at a family gathering, and my mom, I was in a little sport coat and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And my mom put me up on the table. I stood on the table, and I did this story, Fortunately, Unfortunately, which was like a children's book.
Yeah.
And I got a great response. And then, my family's in show business. My aunt's a producer. She was on the Ed Sullivan Show.
Oh, wow.
And so I would go to the tapings, and I saw Ed Sullivan, and I thought, wow, cool way to make a living. So 3 years old, yeah, it was my first gig, and I did well. I like working the room, you know.
Yeah. That's funny you say that, because that's the way I started.
Okay, for your family.
Telling jokes in front of the family.
Yeah.
I'd hear street jokes with cousins. I had older cousins.
Right.
And I'd come back to the family parties to share, the jokes. Some of them were inappropriate, but
right.
Just, I like the idea of making people laugh just with words,
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So that's how you first started telling
first gig.
Wow.
Yeah. And then I would perform a lot in school. I went to the Performing Arts School in Long Island, and
okay.
My first gig where I got paid, I was doing an amateur comedy contest in Aspen, Colorado. I was living there. I got in to the club with a fake ID.
Wow.
And I was broke.
How old were you?
I was 20. I was trying to be a ski bum, and it was like the off season, and I had been fired off some construction sites because I'm, not good at that.
Yeah.
And I went and I won, and then I won like 14 weeks in a row.
Wow.
$200, and back then that was good money. I was paying $300 for rent,
$200 for the Aspen Comedy Festival.
Well, no, that wasn't a festival. That was a contest. At this nightclub called the Tippler nightclub, a.k.a. the Crippler. It was a nightclub right at the base of Aspen Mountain, kind of notorious, real party spot. And, it was a $200 grand prize, and I won 14 weeks, and that's kind of how I got into it. Yeah.
14 weeks in a row?
Yeah.
What was comedy like back then?
It was a lot freer because nobody was taping you on their cell phones, right? So I'd show up, I'd get on stage at 10 or 11 o'clock. Most of the audience was completely out of their mind on cocaine and alcohol. They were completely wasted. It was a resort town.
Those audiences must have been...
Oh, yeah. And then you just get on stage. I would do like 6 minutes of just raunchy material and get people worked up into a frenzy, and then take my money and spend it at the bar and buy party favors for my friends. And it was like, you didn't really care about... At that time, I didn't care about being famous or what I was going to do for my career. I mean, I was 20 years old. I was glad that I was able to get in with a fake ID, and no one put two and two together.
That's I think that's something that comics now don't have to go through, is performing for coked out audiences.
Well, it's Aspen, it was the 80s,
Yeah.
the Pablo Escobar diet,
What was that like? Was that were the audiences aggressive? Was it?
No. I mean, Aspen's a premier resort, right?
Yeah,
so you have people who are there, they're ready to party. And this was like a lot of ski bums because it was the off season.
God.
So I had like 15 roommates at the time, and they would come down to the show and support me. And it was great. They were rowdy, and they had a great time. And I still have a fan base there to this day.
Do you still go out there to perform?
Last time I performed in Colorado was in Rifle, Colorado. And they had a big oil boom there. And I worked for a bunch of wildcatters. And they were a wild group.
I know you mentioned because we talked a little bit yesterday on the phone, and you mentioned the how carrying around credits back then, you show up with a newspaper, or something like that.
Yeah,
that to me, that's like that makes sense, but I've never heard of that. And for a lot of the younger comics, maybe if you want to touch on that, because that's. That would be the easiest way to just show up to a club.
Well, yeah, back in the day, if you had like a newspaper article or a magazine article that said you were funny, that's how you would get gigs. So if someone was coming into Aspen and like Tommy Chong or Gary Shandling or some of the other guys I opened for, you would send their manager a copy of your clip. Of your newspaper clipping, and they'd go, okay, well, this guy's a comedian, let's put him on. No, there was no YouTube. You weren't mailing out beta tapes or anything like that.
Because that's now what they want, as in clips. They want a clip of it.
Well, now I spend all my budget on like my website, DanGonzoMechanic.com, the YouTube clips, the TikToks, the Instagram, the Facebook, and you have to watch everything you say. Things get taken out of context or whatever. It's a different world.
It's a different world now.
You do an act and Interpol shows up. You know what I mean? Like, what the fuck's going on here?
and that's a thing that I know with with your shows now getting recorded. It's like we're in a different world now where people film you, and then I know back then you could get away with doing the same bits in the same city for longer than you can now. Because that's
well, for the contests I was doing different material because it was the same audience, it was the same nightclub.
You were coming out with new material every show.
Yeah, I still do. I mean, I'm primarily a writer. I love to write. I love coming up with stuff, and I love the ability to put a joke out there and just see if it works, as opposed to running it through the Hollywood grist mill where you have development executives and you have to wait, and people are like judgmental or whatever. When you're funny is funny, right?
Right.
You write a joke. If it works, it's great. If it doesn't, you don't use it again.
I know with your stage name is Dan Gonzo. I asked you about that briefly, and I asked, is that because of the Gonzo journalism with Hunter S. Thompson?
Yeah, I mean, I was lucky enough to know Hunter. He introduced one of my shows in Aspen. He's a well-known personality there, and he actually introduced me at the Wheeler Opera House. I was part of a sketch comedy group, so that was a big honor. And we'd see him around town. And later on in my career, when I worked in Asia, I do a lot of newspaper and magazine articles, and they would always go like, oh, you're Jewish, you're a comedian, you're like Seinfeld. And I'm like as far away from Seinfeld. I'm nothing against Jerry, I love him, but I'm nothing like him.
Right, yeah.
And my style is much more like Hunter Thompson in that the Gonzo journalism style is one where you're in a crazy story and then you insert yourself into the story as a catalyst and also as kind of the last person standing.
Yeah.
Sort of like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Right, which is like, that's his writings, like, no one else had done stuff like that before.
He definitely invented that style, and then my coming up in Aspen, kind of right after while he was still in his heyday, definitely influenced me. And then as I went on in my career, that's just the style I took on. I like to tell crazy stories rather than like one-liners or family-oriented stuff.
Did you get to party with him?
No, not a lot. He was definitely partying. He was walking into the bathroom stalls with like 6 guys following him often. So there was a lot of, but I didn't party with him particularly, but he was definitely around town for sure.
Because I've never met anyone that's why I talked to you about doing this, doing the podcast, especially since you've been in comedy so long, like there's got to be a lot of stories that you have.
Oh my God.
Which this may be a 2-parter episode.
Yeah, it's epic.
Yeah. What was one of the, like early on, like, is there any stories that stand out from your?
Well, I mean, working for Gary with Tommy Chong from Cheech and Chong, because I was a huge Cheech and Chong fan.
Yeah.
And I got hired to open 8 shows for him.
Wow.
And it was really remarkable, like not just doing the shows, but seeing him before and hanging out with him.
Yeah.
And I don't get high or drink before I work because I have enough problems, remembering my jokes. But he was smoking weed there in the green room, and he was so kind of self-effacing. I was like, wow, it's a real honor to work with you. He's like, Dan, it's cool. Be cool. And he was really great. And my parents were there, and we all took pictures together, and it just showed me that you can be famous and be cool.
Yeah.
And really, and he was funny, and I still use a couple of his jokes that I stole from him. And I owe Tommy a lot because I've also used his credit of working with him over the years. years without, sending him any money. So thank you, Tommy.
Did you travel on the road with him, or was it?
No, he was doing shows in Aspen. So what would happen is when famous comedians would come to Aspen or the Aspen Comedy Festival that I was in, I would get to open for the guys because I was kind of like the most popular local comedian in the area. Yeah.
And you also work with another one of my favorite comics, Gary Shandling.
Yeah, I opened for Gary Shandling at the Wheeler Opera House, and he was another really great guy, and he gave me callbacks on stage, and he was very encouraging, and I killed when I opened for him, and the next night Howie Mandel canceled me because he didn't want some local going up there. So as much as I love Gary, Howie not so much.
Wow, that was back when he used to put the little glove in his head, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. But that comedy festival opened a lot of doors for me, and then I got onto the Comic Relief University tour and worked a lot of universities and stuff, which was really cool.
And you also went to Taiwan to do comedy.
Yeah, I did. I was in Taiwan and part of a very burgeoning scene over there.
What year was that?
That was in like the early 2000s, like 2004 to 2008, and there was a big growing scene over there, and I kind of got on the wave as one of the expat comics over there, and they actually opened a club, Taipei Comedy Club, and I headlined there a bunch of times.
They have a club in
they have two now.
And you were performing for the locals, or you?
There's a big expat community, so you got about 50,000 English-speaking foreigners there, and then you have what they call ABC, American-born Chinese, so people who speak English, and then you'd have the Taiwanese themselves who knew enough English to come and enjoy the show. And it's an island, so it's very insular. And there were probably like 12 comedians working regularly, and it was a great scene, very good money, and great audiences. Really had a good time.
What size were the audiences there?
Like usually between 80 and 150 people.
Wow.
Yeah.
Every night.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I was pretty popular.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I was in all the newspapers and magazines and stuff, so I had a following.
Wait, so when you do something like that, right now, if you wanted to go back over there, would it be? Because I know some people, like we've had guests on here who had a big following in Chile.
Okay.
And he just went to Chile, and then here he's doing the same clubs as we are.
Right.
But then over there, he's seen as like the, famous foreigner.
I think I get a lot of press here. I wouldn't know what constitutes famous anymore, or if I want to be famous. I think if I went back, because I know all the media outlets there, I'd love to go back and shoot like a Netflix special or an HBO special. Yeah, because I have material specific to that island and to that culture, which is unique. Yeah. No one's doing Taiwan jokes. Certainly no foreigner.
No.
So I would definitely go back there, and I love the island. Well, Taiwan, ni hao, lao ban.
For all the Taiwanese people watching.
Comedy lao ban.
That's cool. That's awesome. That because for me, I've never thought about doing comedy outside of the States.
Right.
And I think a lot of comics probably wouldn't try that. Just because it sounds like. Especially Taiwan,
Well, Taiwan's a democracy, and it's a libertarian environment. So they're very pro-American, pro-free speech. They're democratic. They're very open-minded, kind people.
Yeah.
And best-looking girls in the world.
Oh, I bet.
Beautiful. I miss you all.
You also have written songs and produced music.
Yeah, I'm a lyricist, so once in a while I get some songs made.
So you're all-around writer.
I'm a writer. I write screenplays, I write jokes, I write lyrics, I write ad copy, whatever is paying or I'm inspired to do.
So right now, are you doing a lot of that, or have you done?
I'm working with an artist named Austin Moe, who's out of the Sacramento area. He's managed by the guys from the rock band Tesla, if you remember them, Frank Cannon.
Yeah, I remember.
And we just put out a single, Back into the Kingdom, which is, this kid's a phenom. He's like a White Hendrix. He's great.
Are you writing music at home currently, like aside from that?
Well, I write lyrics and I send them to different artists, and if they want to do them, I share the writing credits and let them produce it. There's very little money for writers in the music business, so it's more of a hobby where comedy is how I'm making my living.
And you mentioned you're working on a screenplay.
I've written many. We had one option by Project 8 Films, and I got Mick Davis attached to direct. We're talking to Andy Garcia. It's a vigilante movie actually set, not a comedy. It's a vigilante set in Richmond.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Can you talk about that a little bit, or?
Well, it's called Booby Trap, and basically it's a middle class woman, a Latina woman, and she has a number of items stolen from her and her family, just petty crimes.
Yeah.
And she starts booby trapping items, and it gets caught on video and goes kind of global, and it's sort of a cross between Falling Down and Network. And people really have responded to the script, and we're looking forward to shooting it hopefully this year.
Wow, and it's based in Richmond.
Yeah. Well, I had a bunch of stuff stolen, so I kind of hit the wall. It's like a revenge fantasy, I guess. You know.
Are you? So you? How long have you been in Richmond for?
I bought a place here in 2008.
2008. So you've been here for a long time.
Yeah, Marina Bay.
Marina Bay.
Yeah.
I know you. I mean, we're doing a show together. You booked me on your show.
Yeah, Baltic Kiss, February 24th.
Yes, and you've done a couple of shows already in Richmond.
I've been doing shows here for years. Yeah. I founded comedy at the Craneway Pavilion back when that was the Boiler House.
Yeah.
So that was my first set of Richmond gigs. Yeah.
You mentioned that recently when we talked, and that was the show I saw that got me to want to do stand-up.
That's cool.
I went there to see stand-up.
Don't sue me. You should have gone into banking.
Yeah, no, I when you mentioned that I went there to see a show where I saw some of my friends that are now doing stand-up also, and that was the reason I got involved in stand-up.
Nice.
In a way, you got that.
Okay.
You know,
I'm glad it's paying off with this great podcast.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's one thing to see it on TV for me,
right?
And then there's another, to go and at a local bar.
And feel the energy.
Yeah. I wasn't even 21 at the time.
Yeah.
I was going in with my brother's ID to go watch stand up.
Nice.
A long time before I turned 21. And that's what got me to want to do stand up.
There's nothing like the energy of a live performance. Being in the room is where it's at.
Same with music. When
100%.
You talked about writing music. Did you ever?
I'm more of a lyricist than a music writer. I don't play any instruments or sing or anything like that.
Yeah. For me, that's I always draw inspiration from live music.
Yeah.
Comedy shows. There's something about being there.
Absolutely.
Even the conversation we had on the phone yesterday compared to being in person is just a way different.
Of course.
Transfer of energy.
Yeah.
And when it comes to that, like your show coming up at the Baltic Kiss,
right?
February 24th.
Yeah.
We want to do a little plug for that, right?
Yeah. Well, the Baltic is a historic building, and it's been there since 1900. At one point, it was a funeral parlor. At another point, it was a brothel. So
brothel.
Yeah. So whether you're getting fucked or killing, it's the place to be. So, perfect for comedy.
Perfect for comedy.
Yeah. Like former whorehouse, so it should work out. That's true. I didn't make it up.
No, yeah, I've heard about
it.
It
is a bordello. Yeah.
It's a good place for comedy. It's a
small, great room.
Small, intimate.
Yeah.
Setting.
Chef Tony, he used to be at Black Pirate Barbecue in San Pablo. He opened it.
Great barbecue.
Great food there, Southern food, and it's a really cool place. And Richmond needed a place to have live music, and we have an artistic community here, and he's been great to work with.
That's the thing that's been a lot of comics coming out of Richmond, a lot of comics coming from the city in Oakland to perform in Richmond.
Yeah.
And that's what that's one of the things that, that's how we started. We met. He's a filmmaker from Richmond.
Right.
From Richmond. And there's more people interested in the arts right now coming to Richmond for that.
Well, because we've seen it all here, right? Nothing in the Rich is going to surprise you. I mean, from city government on down, it's a nonstop crazy show here. So there's no way you're going to freak anybody out in Richmond. Right?
Yeah.
I mean.
Yeah. And the thing about it right now is this, it's great that you don't have to go to the city to see good stand-up.
Oh, yeah.
It's right here. And for you, I mean, you were doing comedy in the East Coast for a long time.
Oh, yeah. I stand up New York, and I also worked a lot of boats out of South Street Seaport, party boats, after prom boats, stuff like that.
How was that?
Good money.
Yeah?
Great. They'd put me on a boat with, there'd be a prom, and then they'd put the prom kids on the boat at 2 a.m. with a DJ. DJ and a comedian and a buffet, and I was the comedian. And so for like May and June, I worked every night.
Wow.
And it was between like $300 and $500 a night.
And that was in the East Coast?
And this is in the 90s. Yeah, this is out of New York and South Street Seaport. And then I also worked a lot of party boats out of LA, Balboa Island, Long Beach. Just very good money.
Have you done like the cruise ship thing?
No. I would just do party drunk boats.
Would you do that now? The party
I have a dog and I own a house and stuff, so less so. But I like to go work in Vegas or LA if I get the gigs. Right. I just worked in Vegas a couple weeks ago. So
how was that?
Excellent. I worked at the Ahern Hotel and Convention Center. I was booked by a good friend of mine, Lorenzo Clark, who's an amazing magician and comedian himself.
Yeah.
And it was exciting. I got to see my name in lights. Got the Elvis suite, the green room. It was good.
That's awesome.
It was nice.
That's like I've never done anything in Vegas, but
yeah, it was cool.
Is it like big audiences? I imagine
it wasn't like a huge audience so much as like the exciting part was really seeing my name in neon for me, and just being in Vegas and having that on my CV, and there were some other comics there who I knew from back in the day, and the guy who booked me, Lorenzo, was at the Magic Castle. He was a regular at the Castle, and I used to hang out there a lot, so it was kind of just great to work with an old friend.
Yeah.
And a great room.
Do you remember your first time performing stand-up as an adult, like after not as a kid, but like as a
Yeah, that was at the Tippler at Aspen. When I was working those amateur nights, and that was great. And then I worked at a place called Ebby's in Aspen. I had a regular show there. Later turned into Planet Hollywood there. And it was a really cool. It was a disco, and the roof would open, and had a weekend show there. I do two nights a week there also, which was really cool.
Wow. What was this, 80?
This is in the 90s. This is moving into the early 90s.
Early 90s.
Yeah.
I always ask every comic this. There's a couple of questions on the first episode we have a comic on that I ask. The first is the first time you saw stand-up,
right?
That you really liked. Like what stand-up act you saw for the first time that made you think, man, I want to try this. Do you remember?
Yeah, I was 3 years old, and we went to the Ed Sullivan Show with my aunt. She was a producer on the show.
Oh wow!
And we sat in the audience, and I saw this guy come up on stage, and all the lights and everybody kissing his ass, and I was like, well, that's the job.
Was it the guy that comes on before the...
No, it was Ed.
Oh, it was Ed.
But I was like, that's the job.
Oh,
he wasn't necessarily a stand-up, but he was kind of an MC and whatever. And I was 3, and I was like, yeah.
Oh, did he do like a monologue before the...
Yeah, it's a big show. A really big show. Yeah, so that's the first time. Yeah, that's the first time it really like kind of registered with me.
Yeah.
And then she would work on some sitcoms. I saw Jimmy Walker open like before Good Times, like early 70s. Wow. He was the warm-up guy, and I thought, wow, this guy's like really funny.
So you've seen a lot of cool...
Yeah, and then I think like in the early 70s, a lot of guys had comedy albums.
Yeah.
So my family would have the comedy albums, like the Mel Brooks albums with Carl Reiner, like the 2,000-Year-Old Man, or the George Carlin record, 7 Words You Can't Say, and we'd listen to the records.
Wow.
And so the records were really cool, We had a Bill Cosby record. He worked clean. We saw how that worked out, huh?
That's why we don't work clean.
yeah. Shooting Quaaludes out of a Pez dispenser at the Playboy Mansion. Hey, Bill, how's it going?
That's a thing like you never expected, from a clean guy.
America's Dad. Here, have another Quaalude. Hey, thanks. How's that working out for you?
Wow, yeah. So you grew up listening, your family listened to comedy albums.
Yeah. We were, again, I was tuned into the showbiz world at an early age.
Oh, yeah.
The nepotism never helped me. I want to be clear about that. It actually worked in reverse somehow. I don't know why, but it just gave me an idea that I could do it.
Right. So you were exposed to the stage, so you kind of had a thing where you probably didn't have stage fright at an early age.
Never, and I never do.
No. And you mentioned you don't when a joke bombs, you don't care. You just
I kind of enjoy that.
That's the next thing I always ask comics is your worst bombing story where it just
my worst bombing story.
I love hearing these.
Yeah, I was working an after prom for Bronx High School, and this was on a boat without a stage, so I was first of all, I'm just on the boat.
Yeah.
I'm backed up against the rail. There's no stage. And these kids were huge. These were all kids from the Bronx. They were all like 6'5", these big kids.
Jesus.
They were wasted out of their minds. It was like 3 in the morning after their prom. And I started doing the gig, and they started yelling about their basketball team and their football team and their sports and whatever. And it was the only time I've ever done this. I handed the mic over to them. I said, "You guys have a good time.
Oh, wow.
Do your thing."
Yeah,
and I went back into the green room. I had a date with me, and I ended up getting paid, and I got lucky that night. So I think she felt bad for me. It was like a mercy. It was like a mercy kind of situation.
It's like, you do this for a living?
It's the only time I've ever given up the mic.
Wow.
No stage, and the kids were huge.
Yeah, I can imagine
You know,
that.
so Bronx High School, you win.
Well, that's what I like asking. Like, I talked about this with Tony Sparks off.
Oh yeah, I love Tony, the Godfather.
The Godfather. There's a guy we have in common. He's the reason we met.
Yeah.
He, I do a lot of shows with him, and like the whole thing with the Chris Rock getting slapped on stage. When you see that, like, a lot of people are like, "Oh, comics are gonna start getting attacked on stage now." That's already happened.
Yeah.
Have you ever had anything like that happen?
A physical altercation?
Yeah. No. Luckily, not.
No.
Yeah, that's okay. Because I have seen that.
I did have my mic turned off once also and got moved off stage. And this was early after I had done the amateur comedy contest. I had just dirty material.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine, Murtha Shirt, he's a famous guy in Aspen. He decided to be my manager, and he booked me into a ski like a cafeteria in the ski lodge. And so there I am, like lunchtime at the ski lodge, and I'm telling jokes about like lesbians and doing blow and getting laid by tourists, and there are kids walking around in ski boots. And it was sponsored by I think the local radio station K-Snow, and they turned off the mic and they're like, "You're done."
Really?
Yeah, and I just skied away.
You still got paid?
I got paid.
Nice.
Yeah, but that's when I realized you kind of have to tailor your material for the room.
So you can do clean all the way if you have to.
I mean, if I have to. Yeah, I prefer not to.
Yeah, same here. That's always the first thing I ask now because I have been booked on like a show where it was like a church show.
Right.
I didn't know it was a church show.
Oh yeah.
I do jokes about getting choked out during sex. And
yeah.
And then I found out with the reactions.
Yeah, the priests get excited. Yeah. They're not like whatever. No, I mean I do some corporate shows, whether it's Yahoo or Facebook or whatever. And those shows you got to be super clean.
Yeah.
I prefer to work like R.
Yeah.
So I just did like a yacht club. Yeah. I'm not going to go super filthy at a yacht club, but I'm going to do a lot of innuendo type of jokes, and that's fine. People seem to enjoy that.
So you find a way to like find your own lane.
You have to read the room.
Right.
I mean, now when I walk in, I know what's going on. So you can tell the same jokes 10 different ways. Right. So yeah.
Yeah, and that's something because I feel I'm still learning a lot of this as a young comic. I'm seeing you can drop certain words on the joke and it still works.
Right.
And that's something I didn't think before because I feel like I'm still figuring it out.
And you can have tester jokes.
Right.
Towards the beginning.
Yeah.
So that'll give you an indication of where the crowd is. And if they give you a little groan, you'll be like, "That's the way it's going." Fuck it,
Do you still go for it if you hear the groans?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. I let them know that's the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
And then they laugh.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I love to do an aside.
Yeah.
If like I tell a joke and it doesn't work, I have a bunch of fallbacks. Like I'll be like, "Okay, I'm waiting for you." Do I need to tell it again? I'll do the punchline 3 times until I get a laugh. I don't really care.
Yeah, because that's the weirdest thing about audiences is they sometimes look around. Is anyone else going to laugh at this? Because I don't want to. That's how it usually goes.
It's part of controlling a room.
Yeah.
You have to let them know that you're in charge of what's going on and that they're going to have a good time. I like to feel like when people come to see my show, it's less of a show and more like they're at a party with me.
Right.
We're all having a good time. We're all partying. They're wasted. We're having fun.
Yeah. Yeah, because I feel like it's if you don't have a good control over a room, you can bury yourself with the reactions. And I've struggled with that when I first started. I didn't treat them like we're at a party sometimes, or like I just, like I feel like I was reading from a paper.
Right.
And that, a lot of comics don't know how to bounce out of that.
Well, a lot of times it depends on whether you're working your fan base. So like if I have a regular fan base, my fans are coming to my show, they know what to expect.
Yeah.
If you're working a room of complete strangers, you're opening for someone else, then that can sometimes happen.
Yeah.
I use the analogy of the Grateful Dead, my favorite rock band. So people go to see the Grateful Dead who love the Grateful Dead. It's an exciting experience. Everybody's tripping, we're having a great time, they're dancing around. The same band can play for a bunch of straight people who don't dig that kind of music, and it's a drag.
Right.
The band's still great,
Yeah.
but it's the fans that make the experience, which is why I try to cultivate a relationship with my fan base.
And as far as your fan base goes, do you feel like you have that where, I mean, right now you have an established fan base here in the Bay Area. Yeah. But for when it comes to where you're performing outside of that, does it ever become a challenge?
It hasn't, like when I was in Vegas.
Right.
It was like a small room the second night. It was like maybe 25 people, and they're like seniors. They're waiting to do karaoke after the show.
Yeah.
And that's kind of more when you power through your material, and you're still getting laughs, but they're not necessarily chanting and throwing stuff on stage and going nuts and lining up for photos afterwards, you know?
Yeah.
And that's just part of it. Sometimes you're hitting home runs and sometimes you're hitting doubles, you know?
And that's the I'm asking, I guess, as a younger comic, that's the struggle I had when I went from doing my Richmond shows that I used to produce here in Richmond and then Berkeley, and then I went outside of that and it's like, hey, how come they don't love me?
Right, yeah, where's the love?
Where's the love?
Because we're not doing it for the money, right? You're doing it for that natural high. If you come off a great show, you got an adrenaline rush that's going for 2 days sometimes.
Yeah, very much so.
I mean, I did this yacht club show. I was high for 2 days naturally. My endorphins were just going nuts. I couldn't even sleep.
That's the struggle I'm dealing with now, where I got to be up for work the next day at 5:30 a.m.
Right.
And if I had a really good high the night before, have you found a way to balance that to come down from that?
No, because I don't have a day job. This is what I do. So I wake up at 10:30 and just look at my dog like, all right, time to go out.
And that's the struggle that I'm having right now, because some nights I do, doing a good show and it goes well and people want to buy stickers afterwards or whatever.
Right.
Then coming down from that.
Yeah.
That's what people don't realize. Like, like I try not to drink or smoke or anything before the show because this gets you up here.
Right.
And a lot of people have never even experienced that. It's crazy.
Yeah, and like after a show, and I like to party just as much or as little as the next guy, people want to buy you drinks.
Yeah.
And I'm usually like, I don't even want to drink.
Yeah.
Because I got this natural thing going on that I can't get any other way. And I'm riding that feeling. I'm riding that rush,
That's such a strange thing that like you can't really explain to anyone that's never had that.
No.
Where you kill a show and then the next day, right after that, you're still.
I would guess musicians probably have the same sensation. You're on stage, you're getting that energy feedback from the crowd.
Yeah.
But I think you have to perform live. I don't think if you're like in a movie or a TV show, you don't get that.
No,
There's
even
just
if
that,
it's a good film you're in, I don't
yeah.
think it's
that palpable energy.
Yeah. Have you ever acted in a film?
No, I can't act.
No?
I can only play myself.
Yeah. That's always the thing I ask comics, because a lot of comics are naturals at, and I figured that's probably.
Yeah, I don't aspire to that.
No. Yeah. That's something because especially when you're on stage. For a lot of guys, they feel like they do put on a performance, but for you, do you feel like you're just being yourself?
Well, I think that I'm being myself plus one. The Gonzo is my brand.
Yeah.
So I'm not walking around in the grocery store normally with a snakeskin jacket and sunglasses and talking about. But it is an extension of my personality. I think my friends would tell you that I'm generally pretty funny when we're hanging out, right?
Do you have a process for writing your material where you sit down and write, or how do you come up with material? I'm not as a comic asking a fellow comic.
My process has changed, but right now what I do is I use voice memos.
Yeah.
So I'll come up with an idea, like it'll come out of nowhere, or I'll see something that triggers an idea, and I'll just turn on my phone and record a little bit of whatever that joke is. And then when I have some quiet time where I'm getting ready to put together a set, I'll just go through my voice memos, and I'll usually put like stand up, joke about crack, joke about hookers, joke about my dog, joke about whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then I'll just start listing the jokes, and I don't have to really write them out because I have them recorded. So the voice memo has been like an amazing.
On your iPhone or something?
On my iPhone, yeah. And then usually what I'll do is once I have a running list, pretty much when I'm walking my dog, I just do my shtick.
Oh,
and so my neighbors are like, wow, he's talking to himself, but he's not homeless yet. You know, they get nervous. I'm sitting there laughing, you know.
So you do say it before you perform. Like for me, I'm never saying a lot of the new jokes until I'm at the mic, but is that like, that's the thing you do? You actually say them out loud?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, and I'll record myself doing a set like in my house.
Oh wow!
And watch it.
Yeah,
Go,
yeah.
oh, that could be funnier here. This could be funnier there. So by the time the joke comes out, even if I've never used it before, it's coming out pretty clean. And also, in the old days, I used to bring notes onto stage, but I can't see without my glasses anymore. So now I have to kind of remember what it was, and what I have come to peace with is that if I miss a joke or if I'm not going in the right order, no one else knows or no one else cares.
Right.
And just being able to be comfortable up there and know I have this arsenal of material that I can pull from in a sort of a chronological order.
Do you remember like your jokes back in the early days when you started? Do you still do any of those?
You know, I just had a bunch of digitally remastered shows that I took like old discs and beta stuff.
Yeah.
And I did take some of the jokes. I had a joke that I stole from Tommy Chong that I've been using again and again. That's pretty popular. I think you mentioned you like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll see something that I really like. Like I have a show coming up after before the Baltic. I have a show on the 10th.
On the 10th.
At the Riggers Loft Winery.
Yep.
And so I need like 80% new material for the next show.
Yeah.
And I have a bit that I took from a show that I did in 2006 about performing in Miami. That's probably would not be appropriate for a winery because it involves snorting a mixture of Coke and Viagra and fucking myself in the ass. I don't know if you're allowed to put that on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yeah. So it involves snorting a combination of cocaine, Viagra, and fucking myself in the ass, which, you know, at a yacht club or a winery, not so much.
Not shock somebody.
But at the former whorehouse at the Baltic Kiss, I think it'll be fine.
Absolutely.
So I'm recycling that material. Yeah.
That's cool. That's
Watch the fans are rushing to get tickets now. Thanks.
Yeah. We'll put the link above.
Yeah. Don't try that at home.
Yeah. I actually, the reason I ask is because for you've done it for 37 years, 36 years. You know, I just went to I have a notebook that I used to use to write down old material, and I have notes that I used to use back then.
Right.
And I just saw this old joke that I don't for some reason I stopped doing it. Where I was bummed out my buddy was murdered, but I was even more bummed out. I realized like I had just lent him $40.
That's funny.
Right before he was murdered.
Right.
You know, his family was asking for money for the services. Like I check his wallet. There's my contribution there. And for some reason I never go back to look at old stuff, but I want to now. Like
that's funny.
Yeah. And I feel sometimes.
I mean, not that your buddy was murdered. You know.
It's a Richmond joke.
Yeah, that's real. 9484 pride and purpose.
Right. Yeah. So
the city council will be voting on it later.
Oh man. So like, does being from Richmond, does that like? Does that add to your material? Like,
oh, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Like when I was working the yacht club, I'm like, it's the safest place in America's fifth most dangerous city.
Is it? Right now it's fifth, right?
Yeah, and I was like, you know what? Unlike other places in Richmond, when you go outside, your car will still be there after the show. Catalytic converter intact, you know?
Oh, man.
Yeah. So, no, there's plenty of material here in Richmond, you know?
No, I
and if you're not laughing, you're crying.
Right.
You know,
yeah.
so.
That's the it's such a weird thing because, you know, I grew up here back in the 90s when it was probably the worst it's ever been.
Right.
When the
Coach Carter, right?
Yeah, and also in the 2000s where it was the murder capital of the country at one point.
Yeah.
And it's funny, my buddy said this. we were talking about this yesterday, where he got offered to do a show in San Francisco. Same night, he also got offered a spot at my buddy runs the show at the Factory Bar here in Richmond.
Okay.
And he decided, I'm going to Richmond because that's probably safer. And it's just a wild concept.
Safer than what?
Than not Hunter's Point, but like downtown San Francisco area.
Okay, yeah.
Where I just did a show not that long ago, and a shootout happened as was happening right
in Richmond.
No, San Francisco.
Okay.
And I feel like it's crazy that this feels safer for comics.
I think according to the police, when I've talked to them, they said a lot of the Richmond crime is like sort of gang on gang and based on social media, you know, so I haven't been involved in too much.
No, and it definitely is, the murder isn't what it used to be when I grew up here, what I remember seeing, you know.
You know, in Marina Bay, people are more like fighting over boat slips. You know, it's just a bunch of old rich white guys going, get out of my boat slip. Pull my fucking yacht in here. What's going on?
Yeah. And some of these shows I've done in like the Mission, one of them particular Mission, the walk there, man, you see guys getting their fucking.
Is that the one across from like the youth hostel there? Because I've done some shows
You've
there.
done some shows there?
Yeah.
No, I remember like doing. I mean, it's been like that, but like doing shows near Tenderloin.
Yeah.
It's just, you know, it's a rough walk.
Yeah.
And I'm gambling my car, you know, coming back to.
Especially if you're tripping.
Yeah, exactly.
Like walking to the Warfield for a concert, lunch rooms. It's you're like, this is a bad video game right here. This is some fucked up.
Did you see some cool shows at the Warfield?
Oh yeah, I saw the Dark Star Orchestra on Friday night.
Wow.
It's a Grateful Dead recreation.
Yeah,
for old hippies.
Yeah.
It was fantastic.
So, but growing up in the Bay Area, did you?
Well, I grew up in New York. I was born here, but I grew up in New York. Yeah.
Okay. So you in New York? What part of New York were you living?
Long Island, Roslyn, North Shore.
Okay.
Yeah.
How was that growing up there?
I grew up with Bernie Madoff's kids were in my class.
Who's?
Bernie Madoff.
Who's that?
The guy who had the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time.
Oh,
the guy who took everybody's money.
Yeah.
It was great place to grow up. I mean,
you learned a lot.
Close to, could take a train into the city.
Yeah.
We had a great music venue in my hometown called My Father's Place, and I got to see the Ramones a bunch of times growing up, and I saw all the bands at Madison Square Garden. And
did you go to the CBGB?
Yeah, I used to see Frank Zappa and the Grateful Dead and the Allman Brothers and Pink Floyd and the Stones
at that place?
And the Who. No, all over. Just
all
being
over.
in New York there.
What year
CBGBs, I probably saw like the Ramones and Blondie and Talking Heads and bands like that.
That must have been incredible to see.
Well, I was like 12 years old. I had a fake ID.
Wow.
I had a lot of fake IDs.
Yeah.
My ID is real now.
It's a before after.
Now it's to show I'm younger.
Picture.
Now I have the ID to show I'm younger. I'm 36.
Wow, that must have been interesting to see shows like that, especially
it's the best.
Knowing like what they become now, like it's a legendary.
Well, you wouldn't think that the Ramones would become sort of like an iconic punk band with people in Japan wearing their T-shirts in 2024.
Yeah.
Because back then it was just like the 80s. It was like $8. We'd go see Joey fall off stage, and it was fantastic. I mean, it was great, and I used to love to see Frank Zappa as well.
And you had no idea the Ramones were.
How would you know?
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? They were just like a band from wherever, Queens or wherever they were from.
And you saw Frank Zappa there also?
I saw him at the Palladium. He used to play on Halloween, every Halloween. So
that must have been.
Amazing.
Oh yeah.
Life changing.
Yeah,
incredible.
Yeah. There's not a lot of bands that sound like the Frank Zappa,
Well, he was one of the guys who actually injected humor into music. So in addition to being an amazing composer and guitar player, his lyrics were incredible. His satire was amazing.
That's the thing that there's a lot of comics early on gravitated towards him because for me, I was inspired by by a lot of the music and comedy that I heard in I'm growing Mexican. There's a lot of humor in that, and for example, I draw inspiration more from. Of course, back then from these sitcoms that I grew up watching, where they would talk regular, kind of like the just regular street talk, and they incorporated jokes in that, and that is what I wanted to sound like for stand-up. Was there something like that for you for your stand-up? As far as inspiration, what you wanted it to be like, or
no? I really kind of always had my own voice.
Yeah.
I have comedians that I love and I revere. I love Henny Youngman. I love Lenny Bruce.
Oh, Oh, yeah.
Don Rickles, Rodney Dangerfield.
Yeah.
Kind of, because each of them move the art forward.
Yeah.
But I've never felt like I
wanted to do what they did.
I never felt like I sounded or acted like another comedian. I feel like I have my own unique thing going on.
Definitely. Okay, yeah, no, man, that's a awesome thing that you've had like first of all, I've never met anyone that saw the Ramones in the 80s, 70s or 80s. 80s. Got to perform with Gary Shandling.
Yeah.
And knew you met Hunter S. Thompson. That's a
lot of counterculture right there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've also partied with the Grateful Dead when I was in high school.
Wow.
Yeah, I partied with Bob Weir.
No way.
Yeah.
How was that?
Unbelievable. I mean, it was cool. We were like, me and my friend were in high school. We were trying to get songs to Jerry Garcia, and we ended up partying with Bob Weir and the rest of the Grateful Dead entourage in their hotel rooms for 3 days.
3 days.
Unbelievable. Wow. Tripping.
Oh, I bet.
And they were so nice to us, and I've been a fan ever since.
Wow.
They were really like cool. We were like high school guys. I wouldn't let any high school kids hang out with me now. They let us like hang out. we're like 16 years old, you know?
Wow.
And we're really cool to us.
Yeah. Where was this here in San Francisco?
This was in Philadelphia. And that weekend, The Clash, I don't know if you remember the rock band, they were staying in the hotel also.
Wow.
And so all the hippies and the punks were in the lobby, and, you know, I was there with a buddy, and we had a great weekend of misadventure with them.
You're tripping on acid that whole time.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Wow, that's
hard. Tripping balls.
Yeah. You had any crazy experiences tripping on acid back in the days, especially?
Many.
Anyone that stands out?
You know, I don't want to advocate drug use.
No, not at all.
You know, how about when I stopped? Well, I was at High Sierra Music Festival, and I realized I maybe had hit my quota. So it's just a microdose with the mushrooms. Don't panic; it's organic. Yeah.
That's insane. Partying with the Grateful Dead. That's like the Super Bowl of partying.
Yeah, it was cool. It was really a great experience, and I'm still kind of part of the culture and part of the extended family. There's a great community here in the Bay Area.
Oh yeah,
and I get a lot of free tickets to stuff, and we all kind of look out for each other, and it's a good little scene.
Did you travel with them?
Oh yeah, I saw them hundreds of times.
Really?
Yeah, I loved it.
That's the thing that I don't know any other band that has a following like that, where they all meet up at the same.
And it's amazing. There's a lot of young kids going to the recreations now.
Really?
I mean, I'm from the Jerry era, right?
Yeah.
But
did you ever meet Jerry?
No, I didn't.
No.
But a lot of kids, like at this Dark Star show, there were a bunch of young people there, and they seem to be digging it. So
yeah. That's a thing that, like, with the Bay Area, there's so many things that have popped up here. You know, like
absolutely.
The Jerry Garcia thing, and I grew up a fan of Metallica. I didn't know they lived here in Richmond at one point. You know,
I mean, at one point I was doing a lot of stand-up at the Purple Onion.
Oh yeah.
There were shows produced by Jabari Davis, and I'm a huge Lenny Bruce fan, and just working on the same stage that he worked on, to me, was like unbelievable.
That's one of the venues I wish I would have done, because when I started, I saw a lot of my peers doing that show with Jabari, and Tony Sparks was the host.
Yeah, Tony. That's how I got to know Tony.
And what was it? Lenny Bruce did that.
George Carlin, everybody.
But
Lenny was like, got dragged off the stage there and was arrested. I mean, that was history was made there. I mean, that's a trip to. It's a heavy place, man.
Yeah, and that's also a trip to think about, that people were arrested for saying.
He was the guy.
Yeah,
he took the hits, man.
Yeah,
him and Jim Morrison. If you think about it, musically, they dragged him off stage and arrested him too.
Why did he get?
They said he exposed himself in Florida, but I mean, he was just like, you know, riling up the crowds, and he was a rebel and against, I guess, the Vietnam War at the time. And, you know, when you get loud enough, they put you in jail.
It's crazy to think that, you know, saying the F word got that guy arrested, and now here, you know, where we are now.
Right.
What do you think the future for comedy is as a comic?
I think it's loosening up a little bit. I mean, I think, you know, I stopped doing it for 5 years. Once I saw Al Franken got canceled, and he's like probably the nicest, cleanest comic I've ever seen. And then Louis C.K. got canceled, and then Aziz Ansari got canceled. And these are all guys who I think are great comics, and I didn't think think it was fair that they were being canceled and that their material was being weaponized against them. Right, and so that's when I stopped, and I had a day job at the time, so I stopped. And I think now, and I hope now, we're going in the other direction where people are going, you know what, the woke, the PC, it's not funny, it's not cool, it's okay to tell dirty jokes, it's called humor, it's called sarcasm, and they're jokes, and people shouldn't be arrested for telling jokes. And so I think people are loosening up a little bit more, but I think that by the same token, so much of it is being broken into bits by TikTok. So you look at a guy like Matt Rife, and I know he's like the hot comic right now. He's a TikTok comic. Right? And so I'm sure the guy can do a set, but it seems like everything's like 15-second blips now.
Yeah,
you know?
and that's the thing I don't like about where it is right now, where, I mean, I know we talked about this yesterday. That's, I guess, the thing you have to do now to get it out there. But,
you have to.
But it also, it's a very, like, it's marketed to, like, short attention span. And that's not always, I mean, for us, you know, we we shorten them down to an hour each episode because I guess for the algorithm, that's what everyone's dancing for, the algorithm right now. You have to keep it shorter, and it works if you put it out in like a 5-second clip. But it's also like, you know, if you only heard a 20-second song, you know, like that would suck.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like as a comedian, I like to do 40-minute sets. That's kind of my sweet spot. And so a lot of times if I'm doing someone else's show, they'll be like, yeah, come do 10 minutes. And I like to do it because I like to, I guess, meet the other comedians and stuff. But to me, doing 10 minutes, just not what I do. I like to do at least 30, you know, just to kind of get into my groove and get it going. 10 minutes to me is just not where it's at.
Yeah, I remember when I first started, 2014, I went to Monterey for 7 minutes.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and could you get your groove on, really?
Not really. No.
Right.
And it's good when you're starting out, but once you've done it for so long, it's you know, you as they say, the young people say, you get cooking once you're at past 20 minutes.
Yeah, and they say, like in the old days, they would say you should have a clean 5 ready to go in LA. So if you're at the Comedy Store somewhere and there's an agent who's doing a sitcom, you should be able to come up and kill with 5 minutes of clean material.
Because that's also what
kind of not me, you know. Right.
That's also what they did, like the Tonight Show back then, right?
Right.
Because I feel like that stuff doesn't hold the weight it does now.
No.
Back then it did.
Yeah.
Now it's just, you know, because I know back then if you got on there, you're guaranteed to go perform any club.
There's nothing like that anymore. You don't really see like Jimmy Kimmel bringing on comedians anymore. And that's too bad, actually. You know, but you had that mass audience, right? Because you had 3 channels. And if Johnny invited you over, you were a made comic. That doesn't exist anymore.
I guess the version of that now would be to blow up on TikTok, but then that's not really.
Even the guys who are like, there's a lot of people on Netflix who have specials now who you never heard of before or after.
Not at all.
You know, so there isn't like one medium that I think jettisons anyone except for TikTok, which is kind of sad, I guess. I mean, I don't know. Yeah,
and also there's a thing right now, I feel like, you know, when I was growing up, I remember, you know, there's bits you can say to you would say the bits you saw on TV to your friends and you'd laugh and you remember that. I don't think there's anything coming out now that you repeat it out. You know, there's nothing
much.
Memorable.
No. And that may be just a function of how much material is being coming at us all the time.
Yeah, didn't you say, Phil, there's like a thing right now where like there's more content coming out every day on...
Yeah, I read some statistic where like there's more content uploaded to YouTube every day than one person could consume in a lifetime.
Wow.
There's something like 400,000 hours of content uploaded every day to YouTube.
Yeah. I heard something was like 40,000 songs on Spotify every day.
Yeah, that.
So how do you get a mass audience unless you're performing live and you create an experience?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, and I feel for me that's the way if I do a good set, you know, I can advertise, hey, I have a podcast. If you like this, then it helps because you gotta find a way to do it somehow where I can stay booked and also get eyes to this.
Yeah.
You know, like...
Well, in the old days, you could put out an album, and if the album sold reasonably well, you could make a living from that, but that doesn't exist anymore.
No, and I know I've seen some guys where they're selling, you know, albums at shows, but not a lot of people come into... You know, I just saw it. Why do I want to see it again?
Yeah.
And that's such a weird, you know, like I can go watch shit on TikTok or YouTube for free.
Right.
And it's really hard, you know, I guess the live, if you have a good live set, that's really, I mean, I feel that's the most important thing, to have a really good set
Right,
live.
but then you almost don't want to put it up on YouTube because people are like,
Yeah.
there's your best material.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, there's this weird cultural thing where like a lot of people don't collect physical media anymore because a lot of people are just like, well, why would I watch the same thing twice?
Right.
Like it's weird that like we've lost this evergreen content, because I'll still go back and watch like old comedy specials, whether it's Robin Williams,
Right.
Bill Cosby, or Gabriel Iglesias, whoever.
But are you physically putting in the
I do. I still collect physical media because I'll go back and I'll rewatch stuff. But I feel like it seems like this current generation doesn't do that. They don't
Buy
reconsume media because there's so much out there. They're like, why would I watch the same thing twice? There's so much I haven't seen yet.
Yeah.
Do you do that? Like, do you like when you watch stuff?
I can watch like Rodney Dangerfield on the Johnny Carson show forever.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's the funniest shit on the planet.
Yeah.
I mean, he just kills.
Especially like when he comes to sit next to him. Yeah, that's
Too much.
Yeah.
So that's the funniest stuff in the world.
Oh, yeah.
To me.
Yeah, but do you still watch like your own DVDs or your own?
I always watch my stuff and then go, man, I gotta go on a diet. I'm like the before guy in the diet ads. You know what I mean? I'm like, I did one diet. I did the tequila diet. You know, lost about 10 years. Okay.
Lost about, yeah. What was that? It was another bit you had about. I mentioned this earlier about when you were younger and you used to get sex for free.
Yeah, when I was taller and thinner. I was like 3 inches taller in my 20s. I used to get sex for free. It was exciting.
That's such a thing that like once you get older, you're like, that's
It's slowing down a little bit. Hard to believe he's single, ladies.
Oh man, we're down to the last few minutes of the podcast here. First of all, it's been great having you on.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
I want to.
I hope it's been fun for the kids at home.
Yeah, right. The kids listening.
Don't send this to the FBI.
This is evidence.
Yeah, I'll never get on an airplane again.
Is there any last stories, any last things you want to put out there before we sign off? I always let this, if you have your social medias where you want to.
Yeah, DanGonzoMechanic.com. And I just really want to say I appreciate, one, being on the show. I appreciate you guys setting up all this equipment and inviting me on.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to working with you on the 24th at the Baltic Kiss.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate my fans.
Yeah.
I've had a great, core group of fans who've been really supporting my comeback and are coming to my shows and chanting Gonzo, 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 and it means a lot to me. And so I just want people to know that I appreciate that.
And I appreciate you taking time out of your day to come here and record with us. You also have a YouTube channel, or do you?
Yeah, well, I'll link to my to my website.
To your website.
Yeah, DanGonzoMechanic.com.
And before we go, we just you got the 10th.
Yeah, the 10th at the Riggers Loft Winery.
And
then I got the 24th with you at the Baltic Kiss, and then I believe the 19th at Max Broadway in Fairfax.
Yeah.
And sometime in March, I think 7th in Oakland.
Oh, really?
With that show with
Comedy Oakland?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll all be on my website and stuff.
Awesome.
But
Well,
definitely come see me and you. That's the show, right?
Yeah, February 24th.
24th, the Baltic Kiss. It's going to be a great show. It's an 8:30 show, so it's actual nighttime.
Yeah.
We got Clara Bijel on there with us, who's also very funny.
Okay.
And it's going to be a good time.
Awesome. One more time, thank you for coming out and
Thank
being
you,
on the
guys.
show.
Thank you, guys.
It happened. It finally happened. We talked about this for a while.
Yeah.
Thank you again for listening to all the listeners. That's been The Voice Party.
And we're out.
Oh, man. Once you take